I look at it as like there's like the career and the business side, which is like the direct to client stuff and the stuff that pays the bills. Then there's like the art stuff, and the art stuff is fused.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'll always be a better husband, maybe a better father one day, if my art is at the forefront of what I do.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I don't know. For me, it's not so much about the audience. It's not so much about what happens with it. It's like the compulsion to make things. I always say to my friends, like, I'm a 30-year-old grown man. It'd be so much easier if I didn't have a compulsion to make things. And a lot of people would like not have to suffer from like 90-minute phone calls of me pacing through my house about like this next idea.
AJ, welcome to the Story Arc podcast, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Stoked to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, I wanted to read something
Okay.
that you wrote on your Instagram. You posted something, and this is awesome. So, AJ, for those listening, he is a talented filmmaker here in Denver. So it's great to meet people here locally. But I've got something here that you wrote. You said after a campaign, or the title of this film was Just Following Up. You say, no matter the size of the crew, at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in the idea that good creative will carry a piece. As insufferable as it sounds, story is what matters. Sometimes simplicity and uber talented crew members that you can trust is all you really need. And I definitely resonate with that. One, we're on the Story Arc podcast, so it makes sense that as insufferable as it sounds, story is what matters. And then having good people surrounding you to create something beautiful. And so I wanted to have you on to talk a lot about your filmmaking because we've had people on talking about the business aspect of things, which I know we can touch on. But you're an incredible filmmaker and in the narrative space, and you have a funny bone, right? A comedic thread without that, or throughout your work. And so I wanted to talk about that too. But first, I was kind of like just to get to know how someone got started in the business.
Totally.
What was it? Was it in the womb for you, or was it? Did you come out with a Kodak, camera?
Close. Honestly, close to it. So I grew up in a photography family. So my parents have had a photo studio on the East Coast where I grew up in Philly for the last like 35 years, and so I have like strong memories of being in the darkroom with my dad as like a kid, and him showing me like Ansel Adams books and like explaining to me the inverse square law and all that stuff, as again, insufferable as it sounds. But I grew up in it, and I grew up around the cameras and got really stoked on lighting and stuff like that when I was pretty young. And then it was probably when I was like 9 or 10, I was really into skateboarding, and Bam Margera was from my hometown.
Yeah.
And so the Jackass guys and all them were making all sorts of stunt videos and stuff like that. So I begged my parents for a VHS camera when I was a kid, and started making just like silly shit with my neighbors and with my cousins, and making sketches through that. And just like really fell in love with not so much the photo side of things, sorry dad, but like the storytelling aspect, and like blending music. I had always been like a musician and as well as interested in multimedia. So blending all that together. And then ultimately I went to college for literature and creative writing. So I really got into the idea of writing and curating stories, and after college decided that I was going to move to Denver to be like a carpet cleaner and write novels. And then I realized I had to like make a living, which was like, got to do that.
Well, the carpet cleaning is pretty profitable.
It's good. Yes. It's a good sort of like honest work. But I panicked, and so started picking up my camera again and like freelancing, and then it kind of went from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's getting started. I credit my dad so much on showing me a lot of the aspects of it, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's cool. So most people panic out of the filmmaking and go back to the carpet cleaning. Right. But you panicked back into the artwork.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think like there's such a strong example from my parents who worked together for 35 years of this idea of like, you can make a living in the creative space. Sometimes that means you have to do really unsexy things to make it happen.
Yeah.
But I think I was super inspired by that. And like the ultimate goal was always to make a living through being creative. I mean, my family, like there's not we like make fun of my one sister for being corporate. Sorry, Britt, we love you. But like my other sister is a small business owner. She's super creative. My parents are super creative. So it's just around all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that like I didn't even really know that there was another option.
Right. When was the first time you made like a narrative short film?
Yeah.
But maybe not crediting like if you did some when you were a kid.
Yeah.
More professionally.
Cool. Yeah.
When did you like aspire like, okay, this is what we've got a script.
Yeah.
We're going to get some actors. We're going to get a crew,
Cool.
something like that.
I would say college. So I was getting really serious into it and I was really stoked on it. So not all the way when I was a kid, but me and 3 of my friends and some very stripped backed gear, we had a script and we were very serious about it, but it was very, very, very silly at the time. It was called Rough Night. And it's honestly, if you get back into the YouTube archives, I'm pretty proud of that film. It's rough, it's silly, but it was kind of the first time where I made something with a group of people and I was like, oh wow, like this was a script, this was on paper, and now here it is. And we took it very seriously, even though the editing is crazy and it's terrible. It still was kind of that first taste of like, wow, we're bringing this group of people together to make something, which was really, really inspiring.
What do you feel like is your style, your tone? Like, what inspires you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always say to people, like when I'm doing pitch videos and stuff like that, that I like to use comedy to talk about dark and heavy moments in life. So films like Little Miss Sunshine, films like Come On, Come On, those are films that I absolutely adore. This idea of like leveraging the reality of life and infusing the comedy, but also exploring those like heavier human moments.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I like that too, because I love I mean, there's obviously like the era of like a Jim Carrey or a Chris Farley, like the slapstick comedy.
Right.
Or even just like the comedy genre, at least theatrical release movies have like gone south.
Yeah.
Like they don't really exist very much, or at least profitable.
Yeah, definitely.
But yet like the emergent genre of like narrative drama, or excuse me, comedic drama, where it's lighthearted, but yet there is like a heavy, maybe a message or a tone, an undertone of that, like existentialism, something like that. You mentioned something before the podcast or before we started recording, neo-realism. Yeah. Explain that to me.
Totally. Yeah. I'll do my best here. My
Go ahead,
Aristotle. My film studies professors are going to kill me, but no. So when I was in college, I had a couple of film classes. I wasn't a film major, but like I said, I was literature, and I really like started to see like neo-realist films, Italian realism, stuff like that, like Bicycle Thieves. I started to see these films that were like more like real expressions of what's actually happening in the world rather than these like super elevated stakes. Like Bicycle Thieves is a great example
unrealistic stakes.
Yeah.
But I just watched Bicycle Thieves for the first time. I'm
so
just
good.
trying to dip my toe in the water of all the, the canon of great film. And I was moved by it. But explain that a little bit more.
Just this idea that like always in my writing for the page and also for the screen, I've always been interested in this idea of like trying to really capture like the energy of what's existing in reality, which is so fucking boring for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it's what draws me. Like I always make jokes with DPs that I work with that like I'm not a fun director to work with because I rarely move the camera. There's not a ton going on. There's not a lot of like fight scenes or like crazy stakes. But for some reason I was always really, really drawn to this idea of like making films that reflect reality at its core. Obviously you have to elevate the stakes and you have to make it, you have a responsibility and an obligation to the audience to an extent. But those are the films that like really move me the most. Things that feel like moving portraits of people existing in the world.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So I think it's hard to like, I think when you first start finding that resonance with that, you're like, oh, I really like this, that you could go two directions. You could go like more the melancholy route, the depressive route, the emo route of like, woe is us, like everything's depressing, life is, you know, hard, suffering and all of this. Yeah. And then I think, I don't know if it's the bottom end of that, or if you go a different direction, is like, yeah, there is a lot of sucky parts of it, but it's kind of funny.
Yes.
There's
yes.
like, if we take ourselves too seriously.
Yes.
And I think that's what the note maybe that you're hitting, because
Yeah.
there are moments where I'm like, I'm trying to be real serious,
Yeah.
you know, and real, you know, existential
Yeah.
and philosophical and deep, you know, with these woven meaning, like Terrence Malick.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know,
Love.
with what's the one with Brad Pitt?
Yeah,
And,
great film. Of course, we're not going to know the name on here, but it's great, and we love it, and you should watch it.
That film is a little
Yeah.
it's a little moody.
Totally.
Right? I do like it.
Yeah.
It has like a certain tone to it.
Yeah.
But there is something like another genre of like,
Yeah.
okay, serious, the neo-realism,
Yeah.
but also like putting a little comedy stroke to it.
Totally.
And could you see yourself like not having, like, I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Is like, is it natural for you to always like make something funny that is serious, or do you feel like it just needs it? Like it's too heavy, it needs it, or like what's your approach with that?
Yeah. My first real short, Cold Call, that's a pretty straight drama. Like that's
Okay.
There's in the first act of that, there's like some witty banter between, but it's basically a rom-com that goes awry.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty straight and sad. And then from there, everything that I've made has always had comedy in it. I struggle to view life, I think, without an ability to laugh at it, because otherwise it's too sad, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like you have to bring in this stroke of comedy, I think. But yeah, I think for me, I'm always thinking about one thing that I think gets me in trouble is I don't think about the audience a ton, which I should more. But I think about what's like fun and funny to me, and also what like a great opening scene to a film would be. That's almost always where I start, is like an opening scene, and they're almost always these like throw you into the moment dialogue scene that's kind of like offbeat and tonally weird. So I think for me, that's maybe just how my brain works. I'm also surrounded by a lot of like really talented improvisers and comics. All my friends are.
Yeah.
So I think you have a hard time taking yourself really seriously.
Yeah.
when
So
that's
those
around
voices
you.
are always going to be
Totally.
around you. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think the comedy, you had said something about this idea of it being too heavy. I think it allows you to like disarm a viewer to get into their heart quicker, I think, or into their body quicker, so that you can then deliver the point of view or the perspective that you're trying to ultimately say. I think it's hard if you come at them right away with like no moments of like brevity or levity.
Yeah. Like, so would you, like, we don't want to paint you in a box and saying, okay, you're just that type of director.
Yeah.
Like you just have that tone of comedy. But
like
there's movies that I've seen more recently that I'll walk out of the theater or finish watching, and it just like rips your heart out.
Yeah.
Like the movie We Live in Time.
Yeah.
recently.
So good. Just saw it.
This one's kind of funnier, but Star is Born always gets me.
So
I mean,
good.
if you kill the main actor, you know, then at the end, sorry,
that movie.
spoil everything.
Yeah, spoiler.
But,
that movie's so good.
Yeah, it kind of rips your heart. I mean, like you're using music
Yeah.
and Lady Gaga, like the whole like expression of their connection together, like that arc is just beautiful.
Right.
And so it does rip your heart out, but there's no comedy in there.
No,
there's nothing really humorous. But I like movies like that. But yeah, I don't want to like paint you in a corner. But would you make films like that? Like
Yeah, totally. My ultimate goal, I think, is, and maybe this is I try to market myself in a way where, like we were talking about before we started rolling, where like everything seems more fun than it is, which is what we're all doing, and it's a ruse, and we should all really dig into ourselves and think about that. But anyway, I digress. The thing, I'm always trying to rip somebody's heart out at the end of a film.
Okay.
That's like the ultimate goal.
Yeah, rip it out,
to
crush
just
it,
rip it out,
squeeze it.
crush it, or to make them feel like, I ultimately think, man, we're already so insufferable, Drew, but we're doing it. I ultimately think the goal of being a filmmaker is to have a point of view and a perspective, and to try to move people emotionally.
Yeah, there it is.
That's like the general goal
Yeah.
for me. I think so. Comedy, I think, is a device to get people to, like I said, kind of like, because it's a feeling, right? Like laughing is a feeling. Communally laughing in a theater is an incredible feeling. But like life is a really broad spectrum of different feelings, experiences, and emotions. And if you can kind of give somebody all of that in one, it's tremendously difficult to do.
Yeah.
But if you can wrap that all up into one 10, 12-minute film, that fucking rules.
Yeah.
Like that is the best. You feel so full at the end of that as a viewer.
It's like a full course meal.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
Being able
exactly.
to offer
Yeah.
that, tickle the taste buds
Yeah.
in every direction.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the best way of explaining it. Is there someone specifically that stands out to you as a filmmaker that really inspires you?
Sean Baker, baby.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sean Baker just won the Academy Award for his film Nora.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I was a huge fanboy. Sean Baker, there's sort of two reasons why I love Sean Baker. One is neorealism, using comedy and sadness together to tell real stories. But then two, his whole energy around filmmaking and independent filmmaking. That's probably even higher. So it's like, I love telling stories and I love really good filmmakers. I also fucking love sticking it to the man. And it's like this idea of like, and you, I think, embody this so much too, Drew. It's like, go out and make your film, go out and scrap together some money, raise some money, bring your friends together, do whatever you got to do to like make what you want to make, because ultimately that's why we got into this in the first place. And I think he is such a good example of that more than anything. This idea of just like, you know, for $1 million or $100,000, or in the case of Anora, $6 million, which is the biggest budget he's ever had. I'm really inspired by that aspect of his filmmaking for sure.
Yeah. And I think it doesn't have to be like guerrilla style, like run and gun.
Right.
I mean, there is an aspect to that, but I love the aspect of, well, you said it in your post, of like simplicity.
Yeah.
But it's immeasurably creative.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is what storytellers need to take the notes and the lessons on, is how could I do this for less?
Yes.
And still carry the same tone across. Or what can I do with what I have?
Yeah.
Because everyone makes the excuse, I don't have the A-list actors. I don't have the big budget, the camera, the friends, whatever, to make it happen. But that is the essence of creativity, is creative problem solving. It's coming up with, how can I solve the problem that I don't have those tools, but I can still make something really good. Like some of my favorite movies, I was thinking about printing out the posters of some of these movies and putting them on my wall just for inspiration. Not so much, I think the essence, I'm going to get to this point in a second, but the essence of...
the people are loving it, dude.
The essence, now I forgot my train of thought.
Sorry.
The essence of finding the best movie of all time, I think, is kind of like the same aspect of the GOAT for basketball.
Yeah.
It's just stupid.
Yeah.
It's just dramatic. And people aren't that big about it, but they're like, what's the greatest movie of all time? Like that. Well,
doesn't matter.
It's art. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It's LeBron, but it's fine.
It's LeBron.
Yeah.
But going back to, so the posters on, like, it's not about like, hey, these are my favorite movies, but these are the most inspiring movies in terms of like what they were able to accomplish. Like, I left the movie theater more moved than anything else I had ever seen. And they did it on such a small scale.
Yeah.
Movies like Whiplash. Terrific. A Quiet Place. I loved it. Because it's a silent movie. And it was so intense and inspiring. What was another one? Interstellar. That was a big...
So good. Yeah. Super simple, stripped back.
Yeah. Interstellar is a little bit different, but that was another one I was going to print out. Bigger budget, but that's a different tone.
Totally.
I do love that tone, but I'm kind of getting off off track.
I think going back to the simplicity thing is like, something that I always say when I'm on set is like, let's try to do, like, instead of trying to do everything, let's do a thing well. And let's do simple things and really execute. Because, dude, it is so hard to make shit. Like, we were talking about that before.
Yeah.
And to try to like really zero in on something that you're trying to say, or a perspective or social commentary, whatever it might be. So it's like, just the simpler you can be with everything that you do.
Right.
I don't know. That's a stylistic thing for me.
Makes it better.
I think
less is more kind of thing. Say less.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think like the simpler you can be, the closer you can get to like stripping away all the chaos of making something.
Yeah.
Because it's like tremendously difficult to like get something from your head on the page through even pre-production, just get it to shooting.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then if at the end of the process you are like, oh, I think that is close to what I originally wanted to make.
Yeah.
It's so hard. So if you have fucking explosions and shit in your whatever, no shame, right?
Yeah.
Write how you want to write. but it's like really hard.
But basically don't do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I have any advice for anybody.
Like if you can do it with like a guy sitting in a room talking on a chair, whatever.
Yeah.
And you can compel people to be, engaged.
Yeah.
Then you're onto something. In other words, you're a pretty good writer.
Yeah.
So like, if you can figure that out first before you get to the explosions.
Right.
I think if you're listening to this, it's like the metaphor there is before you get to the CGI effect, before you get to the Jessica Chastains of Hollywood, before you get to that, like, can you do it with minimal tools and resources, but you're using your creative soul, I guess. But like going on to the thing you were talking about, like it's so hard to make a film.
Or do the explosions. Like you got to do whatever you want. I'm here to tell you you have license.
I know, people can do whatever they want. I think one thing that comes to mind when we're talking about this is if you're a filmmaker or just starting out. Let's say if you're somewhat seasoned, but you've never done a narrative film, to at least appreciate other people's attempts at putting themselves out there. One, they're being vulnerable. They're writing something personal. But it's not even just that. It is so hard. Think about what we're doing. We're playing pretend. And we're saying roll, action. We're recording. We're playing pretend. And then we're trying to make it real. With that pretend aspect. All our imagination. We spent hours doing this. And it's not like, just patronize, like, hey, pat him on the back. But I think if we want to like be inspired to keep going, we've got to encourage each other to say like, hey man, you did it. Like you got out there and you did it. And any artist who's really serious about it is going to say like, yeah, it's not the best. I know. It's just like that one scene, I didn't have the right cut. It didn't work. Or like that one actor was a little odd. But like, I think you should celebrate the fact that people do it because it's
so difficult. And I think people, it's really easy to judge stuff. And it's like, it's just also so cool that people like want to make stuff and then go out and make stuff. And it just fires me up. It's like, speaking of like who's inspiring you, like Sean Baker for sure, but then a lot of my friends here in Denver are making shit. Gabe Furman has a wonderful film that like I love, and my buddy Matt Bruggeman, like people who are just going around and making shit. It's so inspiring for me. I was on a set yesterday, like just helping some friends make their first short film, and like it's really impactful, I think, to see people thrive and do what they want to do. And I think like a lot of times people wonder if their story is worth telling, or if it's big enough, or if it matters, or if it's good enough. And it's like, I don't know, man, just make everything you want to make. I'm like the worst. I'm like not critical in terms of like,
you're not too precious with everything.
Yes, actually I do really want to talk about that. This is like kind of my thesis and like thing that I want to preach is like this idea of like, have a little bit more of a blue collar mindset about it. You know what I mean? Like go out and make shit because it's a rep and because you're learning from it. And hopefully it's good and you're going to put a ton of intention behind it. Like don't just go out and make nonsense, right? But it's okay if like it's not perfect, and it's okay if like you feel like the stakes aren't super high. Like we've all been on those sets where the pressure feels like immense. Like you're never going to make anything that feels important from that. Or you're never going to feel proud of something that you made because you feel like it has to be perfect. That's a big thing that's super important to me. It's just like hopefully you get to build a community, you get to make a bunch of stuff. So like just keep making stuff.
Get out there and do it. It's so hard. That's something I need to hear, but it's challenging though. I think I've done a lot of things that have been that like fail forward kind of thing. Like, hey, let's just get out there and do it. And usually I do that with anything. Like, I want to trade stocks today. And like, that's what I want to start a different business and sell 100%. Pillows on Facebook Marketplace. I don't know, just whatever, But I feel like I've done enough films though where the frustration of like it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And like going back to our aspect of celebrating other films that even if they're not like Hollywood level, they should be applauded. Is that like let's take for example like football. In American culture, we have a way to like gauge different aspects of football from high school to Division I college to professional. And most people like celebrate them all, like I guess you could say equally in terms of like there's people who love college more than NFL. But if you actually like watch it, like NFL, they're so much better. They're professionals, right? But people love college. Why? There's a place for that. It's like that competitive nature. They're very athletic, all of that. And then the same thing for high school because it's live and the tickets are much cheaper, right? But filmmaking, you get Hollywood. And you don't get like, no one's like, hey, let's go watch the local independent film. Like the average Joe, right?
Yeah.
Filmmakers are going to do that. The art community is going to do that. So there's not a place like most, of your friends and family are going to ask, have you done anything I've seen?
Right.
You mean
I
on
love
Netflix?
that question. Yeah, totally.
Like,
dude, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
don't know what you've seen.
Yeah, it's hard to say. No, that's great. A great point.
Yeah.
And I think, I really think it's in our local communities, in smaller markets like we are here in Denver. I grew up in Philly, like Philly.
Yeah.
Really trying to rally around an independent filmmaking community and put it out into the world, because there's a ton of super talented folks who aren't in those huge spaces, and it's been super decentralized over the last 10 to 15 years, and there's great shit coming out of every city. And I think if we are able to really encourage people and bring people together in a space where they're number one, making films together, but then number two, figuring out ways to get it into people's arenas, I think is really important too.
Yeah. What's a way, do you feel like, if you got an idea, the best way to make it a reality, and not have a big budget?
Yeah.
What are some of even the numbers that okay, I've done things, everything's free. Everything's
totally. No, I want to talk about this. This is
and
great.
then things at a little bit higher level.
Yeah. So of the films that I've made, I've run the gamut. So the first film I made, it was just bring everybody in for free. Hey, will you do this? Will you do me a favor, basically? For a lot of that, it was folks who I've paid in the commercial realm, right? So, and there's gonna be people watching this who'll be like, that guy never fucking paid me. What are you talking about? But basically, that helped. Being in the industry really helps, right? If you're doing it exclusively as a passion and you have a full-time job, absolutely you can do it. I'll get into that in a second. But I think it's harder just because of the fact that you're not as connected to the industry, and then people don't know you as much. So that's option one. And in a small market like Denver, you'd be blown away at how many people are just starving to make narrative films.
Yeah.
And they will do it. They'll come on for free.
I was amazed by that when I made my, pitched it on the Facebook group or whatever.
And people were just I want to make it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And then they get a script, which, by the way, Unprofessional is a fantastic film. If you guys haven't seen it, watch Unprofessional.
That's why I brought it up.
It's so good. It is so good. And it's an example of doing a simple thing really well and executing. But that is going to happen. People will do it because they're stoked to make stuff. The second option is paying out of pocket and doing some of your own finances and funding it. I think on average, I would say all of the short films that I've done, somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 that I've spent on my own. And then on the smaller end, probably not even smaller, but just earlier when I didn't have really any money at all, less than $1,500, I would say, for some of those.
Where would you put the weight of every story is going to be different?
Yeah.
But generally speaking,
that's a great question.
Yeah.
Actors. Sorry.
Actors.
I love you. Crew is amazing. They're irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Actors and locations.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Locations too, because a lot of people don't think about that. Whether production design is pretty simple, you can get a lot of cheap stuff, or things come set dressed. If you get an Airbnb or something like that, you don't have to, a hospital scene or something. That's a location.
Locations are huge.
Huge.
Art. I do believe art and production design are tremendously important, and they will elevate it. A white wall you can't work out of.
Yeah.
But
doing
locations
an office,
that exist.
If
you're making independent films, it's super, super big. And then
Bro, I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
There was a film I made, abandoned. This guy I knew had a house.
Yeah.
Completely empty. I furnished the entire thing and shot a film in it.
Incredible.
It wasn't incredible, but it was also really stupid.
Yeah.
In terms of work.
Yeah.
I was going to Goodwill. I went to every thrift store in Denver. I rented a U-Haul.
Yeah.
Loading everything
I've done
up.
that.
And then I had to get rid of it all too.
This is a great
story. I
built
a workshop. The whole thing was furnished. A girl's room, I had a crib. We had different time frame. It was a little too much. But I learned from that. Just get something that already has all the
get somebody or hire somebody that's really good. Yeah. Because there are tons of really talented production designers and art directors here in Colorado. But funny story, tangent, and I'll get back to two other things I want to talk about when it comes to producing independent films at different budget levels. But for Cold Call, we were borrowing my friend's house. Him and his roommate lived in a house. This was 3 years ago now, I guess.
Okay.
And we went and scouted the house, and I loved the bones of the house, but the furniture was all wrong for the character. So I went out and I rented a U-Haul, and my wife helped me set deck the night before. But as we're set decking the night before, like we asked my friend who was the roommate, he had another one who I didn't know, and it was two of them living in the house. My wife and I are like in the throes of this production design. We've got all their shit over to one side, and like my set is set up for the next day. This poor kid walks into the house holding flowers. He's holding flowers, and he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, how's it going, man?" And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, is everything okay? He's like, "Oh yeah, it's my girlfriend and I's anniversary, and we're gonna do dinner here, but it's totally cool, man. We can go somewhere else." My wife and I panic. We're like, no, man, this is your space, whatever. We're just making a silly little movie. Funny story, but ended up he was the nicest guy in the world.
That's really good not to take yourself too seriously, though.
Yeah, I think they're still together now, so I feel like we were a part of that.
Yeah, we're making a silly little movie.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's important. But going back to the other level, so then I recently just crowdfunded for my upcoming movie.
Yeah, what's that one called?
It's called Chugi.
Okay,
yeah.
And you have do you have it shot?
Yeah, so it's shot and it's in the can and it is almost done edited.
Yeah. You're trying to like sort of back pay.
Yeah.
Or like the crew and the actors.
Yeah. So basically, I'm not a big. I am not a believer in when it comes to narrative independent shorts and the idea of like, we're going to sell this and we're going to give it to you on the back end, right? You get a lot of people who are going to promise you that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Especially in the independent short space, it's pretty close to impossible to like get people paid on the back end for like residuals or selling to Netflix or whatever. So it's either, hey, I'm going to ask you to work for free, or I'm going to raise money and I'm going to pay you a rate that we deem fair.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happened. So I raised money for this last film, and we were able to hit our funding goal, and I was able to pay everybody, which like felt really good because I had made 3 previous films where I just asked a bunch of people to work for free.
Yeah, a lot of favors can run dry.
And
quickly,
you start to be that guy that's always like, "Hey, you want to work on my passion project?"
AJ,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So like that felt important to me, and then also with the ultimate goal to fundraise for a feature in the next few years, like I wanted to get that experience of like the awkward thing of asking people for money and like being like, "Can I have your money?" And I'm not gonna have any return on investment. I just want to make some art. Very weird to do.
Yeah, it is.
But
it's like you just sitting in front of a blank wall and says, "Hello, everyone."
And like I don't do well with this. I don't know, and I don't want this to come off as like performative, but I really struggle with putting my work into the world, and if it has any value, and premiering it for people, that's something that is very difficult for me.
Yeah.
So then to sit on the other end of a camera and be like, "I'm gonna do this, but I need your money," and then I'm probably gonna like nervously pace outside while we screen this movie for the first time. Like that's hard to do. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's so many different ways of doing it that I really hope people do it, because it's really
just get out there and make their film.
Yeah, I don't want to like oversimplify it, because like I don't want it to feel like, oh, there's nothing you can't do. There's a lot of shit that's really hard to do, but I do think people specifically here in Denver and maybe other smaller markets are really starving to make narrative stuff.
What do you? Yeah, I have. Yeah, they're starving to make it, put it to their portfolio. Things like that. I mean, it's like it's the bee's knees.
Yeah,
100%. It's a cool thing to do. I noticed that even 2 years ago making the film.
Yeah.
That obviously, you can't just keep cycling out favors from people, but you're making great connections, and people kind of, put in a little extra muscle for something that's kind of interesting.
And like my biggest philosophy on set is like people and time. And so if you're asking people to work for free, if you're asking for favors, like people are the number one thing. And if people are taken care of and like you're leading with intention and you give a shit about the people who are on your set, you're gonna mess up. You're gonna run over. You're gonna do things that like you regret. But if you're truly leading from a place of like, because the people are what make it happen, and it's like it's impossible to make a film without your collaborators. So it's like, I don't know, man. It's important to take your shit seriously and be really intentional about your art, but also to understand like the magnitude and the scale of what you're making.
Yeah. This kind of like comes into a point because like working on set with Unprofessional, I'm used to typically working with me and like a couple other people, but they're amateurs, right? But with Unprofessional, we had like the crew and they did an excellent job. But I think the hardest part, and I think you could speak to this, is the balance between being a nice guy, being kind,
Yes.
I guess would be the word,
Yeah.
versus taking leadership.
Yes.
And I don't think they like, obviously they can coexist.
Yeah.
But some people in culture don't really see it coexist, or it's
Yeah.
kind of that, it's a little bit of a dance.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm curious, what do you do with that? Or
Yeah,
do you really see it? Like you see like, oh, I want to be nice, but I also gotta like make the decision here.
Yeah, I don't know. We might differ on this. I've never, ever, ever in my life ever seen anything get done through force. Ever. Done well. Ever. It doesn't work.
Successfully, yeah.
Yeah, successfully. Like you can get shit done through force, but
When you like define what you mean by force.
So the point I'm trying to make is being on set is really, really stressful. It's kind of a curated stress. It's not real life, but it feels so stressful. You're running out of time.
Probably for the director.
Yes.
Or the person who's in charge.
Exactly.
It's the most stressful for them.
Exactly. That's a great distinction. So the person, if you're running the ship, it feels so stressful, scary. People are asking you shit. There's 15, 20, 30 people asking you all sorts of stuff. You're freaking out. You don't know if the movie's going to work. You don't know if anything you wrote is good. All these things are happening. You run out of time on a location. You're over budget. People are going to be in OT if you go another hour. All these things are adding up. And like, there's two things you can do in that. Like, you can just sort of like snap under the pressure and take it out on people, which I've seen happen so many times. Or you can like recenter yourself and think about the fact that people have shown up to help you make your fucking movie, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And like, think about connecting with like a real person first, because that's like what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think the point I'm trying to make is like, it's really hard to make something like, I'm a rambler. I've rampant ADHD, but I'm going to get there. Like being a grip on a set of a movie that you didn't write, that you're not getting paid for. That's like, dude, that's like the Buddha. Like I always am blown away and so moved by people like grips or gaffers or people who have really no reason to be there, but they show up and do the work and give it their best. I think it's just like people give a shit when you are vulnerable and honest and intentional. And they don't buy into leadership that's like kind of this like performative thing of strength.
Yeah. What about like the line between inspiring people?
Yeah.
Because you're like the person who loves the film the most is you.
Yeah.
Or the guy, whoever's creating, like Quentin Tarantino says it a lot, like it's my movie.
Yeah.
It's my,
100%.
But, and he has a great time with it. But I love like the phrase there is so revealing that it is your movie. So you're going to be the most excited about
100%.
it. But I believe like I've seen this with other people, and it's not like a cult following.
Yeah.
But it's like you can get behind somebody's vision.
Yeah.
And be sort of like a warrior in arms.
Yeah.
Like, let's do this together, man. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's an important thing to do with your crew?
Yes. Yeah, that's huge. I love this. Yeah, we're riffing right now. I think I hold a firm belief that like adults aren't that far from kids. And so like kids are, as you have 3 kids, like if they don't feel safe and they don't feel like they know where they're going, that's when they start to panic and like act out, right?
Security.
Exactly. So like in inspiring a crew, the best thing you can do is show them that like you know where you're going, and you don't know 100% that it's going to work. Like you have to be open about that. Like you don't know 100% that it's going to work, but you feel strongly about the direction you're going. Good. Because in that way, you're being super honest with them, and you're being vulnerable with them to show them that you are a human being, which I think is important. But then too, you're saying like, but don't worry, like I know exactly where we're headed.
Yeah,
I just can't tell you for sure if you're gonna like the destination.
Yeah.
And I think crew wants to feel safe, not in the sense of like, oh, is the camera safety tied? Like, is there safety cable around it? Not that kind of stuff. I mean, more so like that they have a leader who knows what they want and where they're going.
Yeah.
And
it's clear, but like you said, those words like performative, it's not pretentious.
Yeah.
You're not arrogant, but it's somewhat hard to walk that line. I think it just takes a lot of practice, not even when you're on set, just with people.
Exactly.
Like how can you lead your family? How can you lead, your friends or whatever, and say, hey, here's my little mini vision of, we're going on this vacation.
Yeah, exactly.
Not being, just like a terrible person, but also, being able to get to the end result.
Yeah.
And I think do that and not waste time.
Yes.
Because I think that's part of it is like, I feel like I'm wasting time.
Dude.
Like I need to explain everything or whatever that may be. But.
Yeah. 2 threads here that I love. Time. on narrative sets, like
it's distorted.
yeah, and it's also just like, I'm gonna, for anyone who cares about this, I'm gonna catch a lot of flack, but like, merge your mediums and your medium close-ups if you're running out of time.
Absolutely.
Or like, get 2 shots of your master, because you only need so much of your master. You should have your edit in your head.
Yep.
Because like
if you're running on a thin budget, you gotta think.
You gotta respect people's time for sure. I think that's important to me, and also just like it's not so much just like being super altruistic and giving to other people's time. It's more so just like understanding that like you'll get to make another one.
Yeah,
you can make another one. It's not your magnum opus. It's okay.
Yeah,
if you didn't get that.
You
shot
probably won't make another one if you go too far over.
Exactly. If you go too far over and you're a total dick to everybody, then like people are like, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then there was another really profound point I was going to make, but I can't remember it.
That's okay.
But it was going to be really.
It will be there on the shelf when we get back, when we circle back. How do you work with actors? Any tips?
Yeah. Oh, this is kind of the point I was going to make. Agency, like I had a guy when I was first starting out say to me, like, I was like, I'm directing really my first commercial project. Like, what are your tips? And he was like, have your plan and work your plan, but generally like let people solve their own individual problems in their own departments, because you'll be blown away at how
what they can do.
Yeah. And like just give people agency.
Yeah, that's so good.
Because like I'm not a DP, I grew up with light. I love light. I really respect cinematography. And in the first parts of my career, I shot a lot, but now I don't really shoot at all. And it's like, if a DP makes a choice and they have a reasoning for it that works with the story, then it's like, great, that's not my department.
Yeah.
So with actors, I think it's all about like giving them the opportunity to embody what they want in that character. This is going to all sound kind of highfalutin, but we'll go into it. Like basically with actors, if you're working with skilled actors, and I think actors are unbelievable, they want to bring their agency to it. Otherwise, why are they there? And it's the same thing for a DP. Like if you tell a DP exactly how to compose a shot and shoot a shot, it's like, well, why the fuck am I here, right? So with an actor, I think it's really important to show them your vision and to guide them as best you can, like we were talking about earlier, but ultimately let them bring so much to it. Andrew, is it from Unprofessional?
Yeah.
Like I'd imagine he made a lot of choices that elevated the film for sure.
Yeah.
And I think like it's really important to let them do that.
Right. I think too, there's something about like, I think with guys who have been successful in Hollywood, listening to interviews, like who they work with, their crew, their DP, and then the DP has their own little crew as well. Yeah. But with that is being able to trust each other. Yeah. And I think it takes time. Like in other words, you could sort of have a miracle relationship where everything, everyone trusts each other and it works and it's perfect. But it also like, it's not something that just happens overnight. Yeah. Sometimes you find like the perfect DP to run the operation and you're like, every time, I say this, he knows what I mean when I say this, and then it just comes together. Yeah. But you don't have to give up on your DP the first scene, like, well, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Totally. It's like, just massage that, like, work out the communication. The same thing with the actor too. 100% is the same thing. You hired them for a reason to fill that role. And with Andrew, his intuition, like actors are so we talk about like intelligence. Yes. Culture puts up in this hierarchy of value of intelligence. It's like the scientists, the computer science, the philosopher, the whatever, the rocket science, all that. But actors are incredibly intelligent when it comes to their emotional IQ, and people don't make that distinction. Yeah. They know it, but they don't make that, okay, you're actually really brilliant. If you're a good actor, you're really brilliant in understanding people. And then you're able to embody that. Right. And then like an imitator, and that's like really, that's a skill. Yeah. And of course it is, but the point is, I think like you said, just having actors like fill their role, but the intuition that they have to do it. Like Andrew is one of the most brilliant people, not with rocket science. Like, I'm good friends with Andrew, so I'll just riff on him for a bit. But we would bounce ideas off each other with the story itself, and his ability to come up with comedic things. And we had hundreds of other ideas of, oh, the story could go this way or that way.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious.
Yes.
We didn't have the time.
Totally.
We didn't have the budget, but it was so funny. And
Yeah.
I was like, I would never do this really by myself or just with maybe some other actor that just wouldn't fit the role. It's like finding an actor that can take it to the next level
Yes.
too and improve upon that. And then if you could equate that with every member in your crew set, you know, it's just like everyone follows that same, like being able to level up, you know, rise to the occasion, I think is like really important.
Yeah, I think too with actors, they're going to elevate your project, which is really, I think, hard to do at first when you're like a younger director. You want to like be an auteur and you want to like put your
Yeah.
name all over it and everything, but they're gonna make choices
Yeah.
that make it so much better. And I think too, like there's just like things as simple as like you might think there's blocking that it feels really natural, and then like you ask an actor to do it and they're really struggling with it, and then it's like, hold on, I saw somebody say once, like, sometimes I like to get up as the director and do the blocking. And it's like, then you realize like, holy shit, nobody would ever, you know, pick up a kitchen knife like this ever in the world. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's little things like that where they help you see like the reality in it for sure.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing is like, if you want to have some success or make things that move people as a younger director, like just cast really well.
Yeah.
Like find really good actors.
They'll do
And
it.
that's the secret.
Yeah.
Like I'm a hack with no real skills. I just keep finding, I have a knack for finding
good
people
yeah.
who are really good actors.
Yeah.
Shout out to Melissa Dunn and Ethan Landry and Ryan Swanson and Chloe Chamberlain, who are in my upcoming film Chugi. That's screening at the Bug Theater here in Denver, Colorado on April 18th.
We have a banner flashing on the screen right
bring
now.
It up there. We're here to plug. But like, yeah, like they just elevate it so much. But you nailed it. Like you have to trust them and they have to trust you.
Yeah.
It goes back to like adults are basically kids. Like
Yeah.
you just have to feel safe and prep. Please prep. Like please take it
Yeah.
seriously. Don't just show up and like say the lines.
Yeah.
Like knowing your lines is the first part of it. There's so much subtext work that my actors did on Chugi. They line their script with like what this person's really thinking, and then that allows you to really dig into like the actual emotion behind it. Yeah.
So jumping onto like a technical aspect of directing, something I've been really trying to pay attention to more. It's hard to pay attention to it when you're watching a film. Good films make you have a subconscious sort of roller coaster. You're just on for the ride, right?
Yeah.
But to take the intentionality to pay attention to camera movement. How do you get into a scene, but not like the establishing shot, but more of like, this is the thing I've been like thinking through and struggling with is
I have a hot take
getting
on this.
characters to move from one part of the room to another without, like, you could just shoot for coverage and like, okay, I'll just cut to my wide.
Right.
But when you're an indie filmmaker, you're like, you're running a slim, a budget with shots.
Yes.
And you've got to think how can I get 2 shots out of one?
Yeah.
Or 3 shots out of one? And paying attention to that. So back to the really practical and technical side of things.
Yeah.
Are there any tips that you would say when you approach, okay, we've closed up, scene 3 is done, we're moving on to scene 4, let's pack it up. When you go there, you start blocking, rehearsal, whatever, and shot coverage. What is your approach? Any technical tips for us?
Okay. Big grain of salt here for people, because I hold very firm a philosophy that gets me in trouble a lot. This goes back to me not being fun to work with if you're a DP out there. I rarely move the camera. I don't like to move the camera.
In a scene.
Correct. Yeah. And across the entire film, Chugi that's coming out, there's 2 times that the camera moves. It's a 10-minute film. The camera moves twice.
The DP loves it then. He can just tinker around with the lights and get the lights perfect and then ready to go.
So I have a huge affinity and just like a total love affair with like static frames and like people moving through the world. That has like a intention.
That's so good, yeah.
It has an intention behind it in the sense of like a lot of films that I make are exploring sort of like I said, like grief or heavier things and like people feeling stuck.
Yeah.
And so with the camera not moving, they feel claustrophobic and stuck in these moments.
I love that. Yeah.
And that's a really strong authorial intent there. It's like you shouldn't really hopefully see that. And then on top of that, like when the camera moves, the 1 or 2 times, it just feels impactful, and you go like, wait, holy shit, like the camera's moving. It hasn't moved the whole time. This must be important. I should look at this. So going back to the original thing, I think you're exactly right. When you're making independent films, the number one thing you have to be thinking about is like the edit in your head. Yeah. And it's like, do I need this? There is such a philosophy, especially coming from you and I both coming from client-facing stuff, commercial spaces, like, we should just get it to get it. We're here, right? Yeah. I hate that philosophy in independent filmmaking. It's like, well, you know, are you getting inserts because they have a meaning in the story? Yeah. Or are you just getting inserts in case you fuck up your edit and your shoot? And I think the thing that is, and we'll get maybe a little bit more technical after this, but like the thing that I love about filmmaking is that like you set out to make something, and your whole gig is to see if you can do that. So to then cover it up while you're on set seems crazy to me. It's like the whole fun of it is the risk. Yeah. And then like, hopefully you're operating at stakes budget-wise and friendship-wise, where like, if it doesn't work, that was the fun of it. Like the point of it was to see, hey, I want to make a film where the camera never moves, or I want to make a oneer, you know, or I want to make this thing. And this is my perspective and point of view that I'm putting into the world. And like, that's what I want to try. Yeah. So for me to then get extra coverage and shoot inserts and to hose it down for the sake of hosing it down feels crazy to me. It feels like it goes against like the rule book that I've created for myself. Yeah. When it comes to transitioning to a scene, can you say more about getting set?
The question?
Yeah. Yeah. Like blocking with actors.
Well, yeah, like you're saying or are we wanting to talk about so I feel like transitioning from one scene to another is really important
and so hard.
But I also feel like, to be honest, for me, I feel more confident with that than with, but maybe I'm overcomplicating it, is how to get characters to move within a room or a space. Yeah. And feel the continuity in the edit. And maybe I'm trying to do too much. I'm like, okay, he's going to go here, and then we're going to cover this. But yet, when he approached, was he saying the line at the time? Or like, should we have him say the line? And that's where like,
this is great.
Rehearsal. So take it away then.
I find transitioning between scenes really fucking hard. Okay. Like, that's like one of the hardest things for me, to get that pace right. Do you want establishers? Do you not? I have a tendency to I love wides, and I love scenes where you wish you could get into the close-up quicker in the edit, because it creates this feeling of like, I want to get in, and usually I'm making characters that are feeling that. Blocking and the continuity in the edit. This is great. Yeah. I was talking about this morning with my buddy Gabe Furman. Okay. And we both, I think, have a hot take on this. And this comes from the great and powerful Marty Scorsese's editor, Thelma. I can't remember her last name. Yeah. I just saw this thing. But fuck continuity. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all. Yeah. Like it matters if like there is a key prop or something that you have an insert of, and it matters if the guy's on the other side of the thing or whatever. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Like
like the 180-degree rule and all of that stuff. Yeah. Like
that matters.
Okay.
Yes. 180 matters unless you're flipping power or whatever. Just have intention behind that. Yeah. But if I see it happen all the time with people who are maybe less experienced, and that's okay. But here's my thought on it is like, oh, we got to refill the donut box, or we got to refill the beer glass.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Or we got to cut on action. You got to cut on action. Yeah. If like
they're putting on a hat, you know, and you cut to the other shot, it's got to be like in the same.
Cut on the emotion. Cut on the emotion. Yeah. Cut on the emotion. Fuck what they're doing, like in terms of their arms, and because if the viewer is invested, they're going to care about the emotion in your actor's face. Yeah. I love this topic. I'm so glad you brought this up.
I'd love to cut like a whole feature film with an editor with that same principle in mind, and then see it like shake out. I don't feel like I have enough practice, and also I think I need like another person to be with me editing, to be like, no, like you don't need to cut on that action, or like, no, it makes sense, like that kind of felt weird.
Sometimes you
because you can get way into your head.
Well, you lose pace, I think, too, if you're so worried. Yeah, and you get in your head.
Yeah, if you're like looking at 10 frames, or 10 seconds of the film,
and you're like, it's got.
You're like, you're right. That doesn't make sense. Every time I play it back in this 10-second loop,
exactly. Doesn't make sense. And then you're just like, you've lost so much time and emotion in that like 6 seconds that you're like, well, I gotta wait for his arm to go up.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly. If this comes, the actual cut. Yeah.
If this comes out before we're screening Chugi and you're at the Bug Theater, look in the fucking scene in the white kitchen.
Yeah.
And watch Chloe Chamberlain's left hand and right hand.
Yeah. There was this I was watching sorry to
No.
interrupt that. There was a scene or movie I was watching, or I just like glanced over at my wife. She was watching this movie on the airplane. And when you don't watch stuff without sound, you can see a lot of the continuity errors. And I was like, what just happened? It wasn't even a fight scene, but it was like two people talking and they were kind of revolving around each other. But the camera decided to just like move somewhere else, and then someone else jumped. It was like totally odd, but I'm sure no one else would have saw it if you're like listening, you're engaged in the conversation,
if
the
it's
story.
good, if the editing's strong overall.
In other words, like, you can definitely overthink the continuity aspect of it. Like how many donuts are in the box is like a great example of that. But I think the hardest part is if you're the director and the editor, or it doesn't really matter. If you're just trying to be an aspiring editor, and if you're a really detailed person, I find that I can be way over analytical.
And I'm not a detailed or analytical person. If you haven't been able to tell, but you edit your own stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like I thought Unprofessional had such a strong pace and energy to the edit.
Yeah.
And I think that's super, super important.
It's nice to be able to control it.
And I'm a huge proponent of it. Shout out Tyler Sapp, who's been telling me to stop editing my films. I'm gonna keep doing it because it's like it's really hard to hand that off. It's also the fun part, dude.
Yeah,
crafting it, like chiseling it down.
Yeah, it's kind of like it makes sense then. Like I think if you have like take the bigger name guys, you know, like Nolan and stuff. Like he has editors or an editor, and I forgot her name. But like editors are also very brilliant people.
Yeah.
Like they understand story. They're very discerning people.
Yeah.
So they get the vision. So like to have an editor almost like as like the best metaphor would be like a personal assistant.
Yeah.
Like they're another you.
Yeah.
But they're just doing all the technical work. And then they iron it out, and then you can go see it. I think I would approach that. I would like that method much better, to have someone who gets the script, understands it. They go and edit it, and then I just sit and feel it.
Yeah.
Because it's all about feeling. Yeah. It's not about, did we cut right? Or did, where's the music come in here? Like, did I feel it? Was I engaged? Was it interesting?
Right.
Let's move on to the next scene.
Yeah, totally.
And I think when I jump into my edit though, I'm like, okay, we have 5 takes of this. And like, oh, but I really like the take here. And then, but yet this was kind of like a weird thing. And then your brain just like starts swirling.
And I've been there. I don't want to make it seem like I'm like this person that like but it's like, I'm in the process of editing a film right now. And it's like, I don't know. I think a good thing for people to hear is like, you're probably going to, if you write, direct, and generally if you're independent filmmaker trying to make shorts happen or features happen on a small level, you're producing the film too. Like I had lovely producing partners, Deanna Shakel, and people who are the best, like that helped me make it. I'm not saying I did everything, but you're heavily involved for 6-8 months probably in this process, sometimes longer, and especially if you're making a feature way longer. So like by the end of it, you hate your own film. Yeah. Which is like, I don't mean to say that as like an uninspired way. Like obviously I'm proud of it. Yeah. I think, but like it's really hard to like be objective and to like, like, I don't know. I know a lot of people who have, they're better at that. Right. They have higher self-esteem, I think.
Well, I want to circle back to some of the story aspects or like your hot takes. Yeah. But before that, I want to ask about like, what do you feel? I have a few kids. Yeah. 5, 3, and 1. And married, kids. Yeah. The whole deal. Which I think is great. And I think most, depending on what your aspirations are, I think it's a great thing. And I think like our culture is sort of like degrading the sort of traditional family centric view and all of that. And it's not even like it doesn't have to be a religious or political discussion. Yeah. The point is like, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have families. Sure. There is this thing called reproduction. It's important. But, the aspiration and ambition that you have, versus the balance with family. And I feel like, the difficulty is like, I watch my kids grow up, and they're real young, but getting into sports, their school events, there's their own personality. They're their own human. Yeah. Do I want to sort of drag my kids through the dream, my own dreams? Totally. Like it's they're sort of going to the beat of my drum. Is that, morally accessible or like allowed? Should that be a thing, or is it something that I don't know? And I mean I have a lot of thoughts with it, but I think the balance between family and career, I don't think it needs to be like a split, hard split. I think if you can fuse the two together. Yeah. So like I have my kids, here at the studio. Totally. I have them on sets when they can,
Totally.
and when sound's maybe not required.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I try to have them, help in any way they can. They're real young. And then my wife sometimes will bring, the the crafting, all that stuff. But it is a bit of a challenge. But what's your take with balance of like a pursuit of career and versus, but that's the thing, it's the word. It's like, it shouldn't be versus.
Yeah, no,
it shouldn't be against. But
no, it's crazy. I am such a fan. I'm a really, really, like, I'm the product of creative parents, of creative business owning parents. And I am so incredibly grateful for that.
Yeah.
This product of seeing my parents go out and make a great living through making pictures. Like, it's nuts. So I think to have that balance with your kids and to show that to your family, I think is so important. I mean, like, my wife is a nurse, but she is very creative in her own right, and she is getting a production design credit on my upcoming film Shugi because like we shot it in my house, and she's incredible, and she like did so much incredible shit. And I do think versus is okay, only because I think like as an ambitious person and somebody who is really, really, really driven to try to like make some great art and to like have a successful and sustainable career. I think it's like really important to temper your shit and to just be like, yo, like at the end of the day, my wife and my family is my number one. Like, and
that's okay, is what you're saying. Like, that's a good thing.
I think it's dope, dude. Like it's my wife is a badass, and like I love spending time with her. And I think for me, this is something I really wanted to say on the podcast. Let's say you and I fast forward, we get these development deals. We're crushing. We're making features. They're selling out. All of a sudden, people are watching movies again. Incredible, right? And so, like, we get signed to an agent. All these amazing things that you think is like kind of like part of what your career is supposed to be. And then next thing you know, you're answering to a boss, and you're answering to an EP, and you're answering to an agent, and all that stuff. And like, listen, if you want to sign me, I'm here for it. But I'll sell my soul. But the reality is, like, right now at this juncture in our lives, like, I'm 30 years old, and I'm in a position where if something is under 20 pages, I can call my friends, and they'll be pretty stoked to do it. Yeah. And maybe I can raise some money for it, or maybe I can pay them out of pocket, or maybe they'll do it for free.
Yeah.
That's kind of the dream.
Yeah.
Like,
it is. Yeah.
Like, as soon as
what else do you want? Yeah,
that's how I feel. Like, I think we have such a pillar of what success looks like.
Yeah,
and
it's only the red carpet in LA.
But like, what about for me? I have had opportunities to work with larger agencies, to do things, work with huge clients. Shit is cool, but like, there's nothing I love more than creative control.
Yeah,
because I'm an absolute control freak, and it's like,
AKA the director.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like that idea of like family first and like me and my wife hanging, like that's a dream.
Yeah,
I think there's such a push, especially in the world of entertainment, of like glitz and glam and huge budgets and like do massive commercial shit and big. I don't know, man. I just want to go to the same coffee shop every day, see my neighbor, and like make some movies with my friends. I don't know. Is that so wrong, Drew? Like, and I think awesome. I think the balance comes from, on the business side, being able to do some jobs that are not super cool, do some corporate work, do some commercial work that is like kind of lame, and fund what you really want to make, and then spend time with the people that you care about spending time with.
Yeah.
So I think versus is okay, because it's like, I don't know, man. I look at it as like there's like the career and the business side, which is like the direct to client stuff and the stuff that pays the bills. Then there's like the art stuff, and the art stuff is fused. Yeah. Because it's like, I'll always be a better husband, maybe a better father one day, if my art is at the forefront of what I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's very much a part of who
it's of me. Yeah. It's self-expression.
So you're saying like separating the self-expression from the career, like not equating success with the two. So when it comes to career, there should be a career versus your family.
Yeah, I think so.
Family is priority. But when it comes to like self-expression, it's not like, there really isn't like two. It's who you are.
It's who
like
you are.
Your wife married an expressive person.
That's exactly it. Yes.
Yeah.
And
it's like, I get that. And I think that's actually like a really important point. Because I think it's really hard to, well, one, success, it goes back to the football analogy of like there's not levels in filmmaking that are really popular in terms of like, you either are Christopher Nolan or you didn't make
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Like, I
exactly.
either saw your stuff on
Yeah, yeah.
Netflix or you're not a successful filmmaker.
Yeah.
How could you call yourself a filmmaker if you've never once, you
Right.
know, been to Sundance?
But that's the
you know?
but that's the commerce behind it, right? Not to
Right.
sound like, again,
But
insufferable.
even Sean Baker
Yeah.
said, like, I didn't even make any money off this
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
You know? It's like
That's what we want is like entertainment and listen, dude. Look at me. I'm on your podcast. Of course I want people to see my shit. But like at the end of the day,
yeah.
I don't know. It's for me, it's not so much about the audience. It's not so much about what happens with it. It's like the compulsion to make things. I
Yes.
always say to my friends, like, I'm a 30-year-old grown man. It'd be so much easier if I didn't have a compulsion to make things. Like, it'd be awesome if I didn't think about this stuff.
Yeah.
If I didn't spend most of my
Yeah.
weekends or extra time like thinking about how to make art,
Yeah.
I'd probably feel better, Drew. I probably would feel more grounded. And a lot of people would like not have to suffer from like 90-minute phone calls of me pacing through my house about like this next idea.
Yeah.
But that's all
like
I got.
if you switch that, because I feel this sometimes.
Yeah.
If you switch it to like I've got to be the next Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Then that's that's really unhealthy.
Yeah.
Because now it's career focused.
Yeah.
It's climbing the ladder.
Totally.
Of that, and then
You could get famous way easier.
you could do a lot of other
Like
stuff.
you could make a lot more money. It's like if you want to make money and you want to be famous, I would not try to make like dramedy films in this day and age.
a film called Chugi.
Yeah, I would not make a film called Chugi that's like basically a 10-minute expose about a married couple and how they struggle through societal expectations. And like not a ton really happens in the movie. It's just kind of sad people talking to each other. I would probably, you know, I don't know, maybe get some brand deals. It's going to be a lot easier if you do that, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think being married to the idea of what you could be, like greatness, you know, that competitive edge or that spirit of like, just coming from the free market world of I can be the Michael Jordan of filmmaking, you know, I can go out there and do that.
That's in me. I don't want it to seem like I'm some guru. That's totally in me. I try to temper it the best I can because there is a drive to be great, and it's hard. It's very hard.
But having a world where, because I think about this a lot, is okay, what if I don't make it? But then like, what is the definition of making it?
Right.
Because like you said, we've already made it.
I don't know. I really do think we have.
Yeah. And so when you stop and I feel more on the emerging side of that. Like given another 5-7 years. And not like, oh, I've got to make more films. But I really look back at the nice little success we had. And what's the success? It's like people liked it.
Yeah.
You know, the little film I made.
Totally.
So it's like that. Well, I think there's twofold success. Now I'm really getting off here, but the twofold success is the what you saw in your head is now
sick
out there. It's like there's something so beautiful about seeing something, feeling something, and then being able to like embody that in a skill set, whether directing or just bringing your skill set to the table, bringing other team members, crew members to the table, actors, and saying, okay, let's do that. Let's make this a reality. Success number one. Then success number two is like, hey, other people also found an affinity with it, resonated with it, liked it, enjoyed it. And that one definitely is like, I feel like a second tier. Because I can go to bed at night being happy with like, wow, we made it happen. We made what was inside come out and it was real. But yeah, after that though, success number three of being the next great whatever or going off into these big film festivals is like, you know, should you aspire to it? Sure, but you shouldn't stress about it.
Yeah, I think so.
You shouldn't worry about it. It shouldn't cause anxiety, and definitely not with your family.
Yeah,
because like that to me is like the where you gotta like draw the line in the sand of like, don't let your family feel the stress of your ego.
Yeah,
you know,
totally. I think it's so much ego in this shit. And people have been making like killer livings in our industry for years by having massive egos. And so like there's times where it's probably going to work for you. It's just kind of an empty existence. I think too, like it's great to strive and it's important to strive because I think ultimately if you get a film into South by or Sundance or Santa Barbara, like what you're doing is you're saying, at least for me, I want to make art because it helps when I read a novel or when I watch a movie, it makes me feel less alone. It makes me feel connected to other human beings. So by getting it to a larger festival or to distribution per se, like then you're getting more people to see that, which is giving it that feeling that you ultimately wanted to do. So I think it's okay. It's just like, I mean, I don't know, man. What do you want?
So circling back to some of these hot takes.
Yeah.
And, you know, the industry is changing.
Yeah.
You know, there's AI, of
Yeah.
course. There's streaming.
Yeah.
There's new production out, like A24 and the stuff
Yeah.
that they've done the last several years. And then there's just trends in general of, you know, the democratization of consumer, prosumer level stuff being accessible to anyone, which is great. But like, there's a massive shift in the creative space, filmmaking space, all of that, theatrical releases, all those things. What's my take direction do you want to go with all of these avenues?
Dude, Drew, this is tough.
What's weighing on your...
I am an AI alarmist. I will say that. A deeply terrified AI alarmist. I do think it'll probably decimate the knowledge working class and ultimately completely disrupt society. You can keep that in if you want to.
Yeah.
I think we got some time, though. A little more time than we think we do. I think for me... I'm going to sound so. I'm just gonna say it. It's fine. I think that movies, like, okay, how do you get your shit out there? I'm a terrible example of somebody who like promotes their work and markets their work and like does the social media racket. Lately, I've been doing it a little bit more to try to play the game.
Bravo.
But yeah, thank you.
Good job.
It's tough. But like. I think that like the medium is the message, right? So like social media for me is not a space to play films.
Yeah.
YouTube is a different avenue. I think that is a great space to put short films and stuff. But like short form content dictates spaces like Instagram and TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to promote your film, Instagram and TikTok are great spaces to do that, right? It's a marketing campaign for your film, short form content. But I don't see the value in playing a 9, 12, 15, 18-minute short film on, like, say, Instagram or TikTok. Everybody's going to disagree with me there, especially, like, the TikTok people. People love TikTok. Don't have it, never been on it. So I don't know
too many people that play their films on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
mostly
I'm
it's
not
just
saying
to
that.
promote.
I don't see it as, like, a big
No.
trend. Yeah.
So I would love... Like, I think in community with other human beings in a live screening, whether that's in your basement or at a theater.
Yeah, that's fun.
That's a place to do it. But that's more so on the small end. When it comes to, like, the independent filmmaking world in general and, like, guys like Jim Cummings who have figured out how to make films on a smaller budget and do their own distribution and then get them out to the world and also make money for themselves, but also their investors. Like, that's ultimately, as I move into working on features, like, that's the space that I would love to figure out how to crack the code on. Because, like, yes, we talked about the intersection of art and commerce and how commerce is yucky and gross, but also, like, it also allows us to get films to people. So that's what's kind of next up for me is, like, how the fuck do you figure out distribution in this moving landscape?
Yeah.
And how do you make work and get it into the space? I don't think we're just a younger generation, so I'm not as purist of, like, you have to watch movies in the theater.
Yeah.
But I love the theater experience, and I would
great.
love to get a theatrical release someday. That would be the lifelong dream. I think that's where film should be watched, specifically comedies.
Yeah.
Like, to laugh with people. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of that stuff. I think distribution is really hard, and it's really moving right now. Like, the idea of getting our films bought and put out into the world, that's changing so much in the last, like, even 2 years.
And the shift, though, is like, well, that's why all the unions went on strike.
Yeah.
Was because the bigger players, the bigger guy, the blue chip streamers, they were raking in the income without any new or updated models of how the revenue is sort of split, and that's like the fear is that people will sell their souls to the name of getting their art in front of other people while sacrificing the actual profit of making a career out of it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the fact that we can make a career is cool, but like people do all sorts of crazy stuff in terms of how they make money.
Yeah.
Like, remember, when COVID happened, there were non-essential job, whatever, like non-essential, you can't do that. So like what's actually essential, things like that. But like they're basically every job right now.
Yeah.
Everything else is like commodities will be taken over by robots in a few years.
100%.
But like the large part of the workforce is doing things that like, well, we don't necessarily need that. We don't need Instagram influencers for makeup tutorials.
It's pretty,
but you can make a living off it.
A pretty good living. I'm thinking about doing it. I mean, here's my worry. Right, we're talking about hopes and then worries. Like hopes is that we can get to continue to like make art and people will care about it. My worry is that like the continuing sort of thread of social media and its impact on art is that ultimately, and I think we've already seen this happen in production too, is like people generally don't care what things look like anymore in the production of it. And I think we run the risk of eventually getting to a point where people don't really care what it sounds or feels like or any of that stuff. And it's more so just like, give me something to distract.
Yeah.
And then we're just creating art. We're no longer creating art. We're creating content. God, how did I get into this? I thought I wasn't going to get into this, Drew. And now I am your most hateable guest. But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. It's very tricky to want to make stuff that maybe isn't as commercially appealing. Mm-hmm. And I don't say that in the sense of like, woe is me, or like nobody likes my stuff, but it's really brilliant and I'm really a visionary. It's more so just like the shit that interests me is less so something that like there's a smaller audience, but if you can take advantage of that smaller audience, then a lot of people will see your stuff.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be everything for everyone.
Yeah. And that's good. And maybe it'll sort of like, I guess, sectionalize to different groups. Is like now, just as with social media audiences, like you have your niche market.
Yeah.
Maybe movies will begin to go that direction in terms of profitability. So like you go watch the latest Transformers movie.
Yeah.
You pay, well, now it's like $15 or whatever. But, you know, it used to be like $8, $10, and I know it used to be even cheaper. But the point is, like, that's not a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, you could debate that, but in the same fashion, you'll go to like an NFL game, and get like, you know, the best seats. You could have the best seats in the theater, the best seats in at an NFL game, and you're paying like $250, $300.
It's crazy.
Depends on the team. That's a lot of money.
That's
but
what we value.
People do it, right?
Yeah.
So what if you have like a niche market, and to watch your movie, you're spending, you know, hey, it's a $50. But you get, it's packaged. You know, you get a behind the scenes with the director and the cast and crew or something. It's all digital, but things like that could be the future too.
I think so.
I can't really speak to it that much.
I
but
think,
the point
Drew,
is,
the future that we're heading towards is where you go into your you probably likely don't even type it anymore in 10 years. And you just think it, and you go like, you're like, hey, make me Die Hard, but put Drew as the lead. And
AI.
And then also like, you know what? Can you make the whole soundtrack Krungbin? I want it to have like a chill vibe. And I don't have a lot of time, so can you do it all in like 11 minutes?
Yeah.
Boom, spits it out. There you go.
Yeah.
Don't put that in. Please don't put that in. It's so depressing. It's so depressing.
But if you do that, then
I think
who has the best story wins, though.
I do. Well, here's what I think. I think ultimately we're moving towards a future with AI where people are going to, both brands and consumers, like viewers and audiences, are going to want to align. It's not going to be all of them or a ton of them. It'll be a subsect of people and brands who want to partner with people who are 100% organic in the way that they create stuff. In the same way that like there's been a huge movement for healthy foods and like 100% organic foods. I think we're going to see that.
So like human-made stuff.
100% human-made stuff.
I thought of the same thing.
Yeah, like I really do believe that's going to happen. I think it's actually at a certain point going to be a status symbol for brands. High luxury brands are going to be like, look at us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it already exists, like handcrafted leather goods.
Exactly.
Right? Handcrafted.
And you pay way more.
Yeah. And it's like, why? When a machine can do it. Because you value the aesthetic. You value that someone put time into it, whatever it is. It's the whole brand story aspect of it. I think the same thing with films. I'm still on the fence with AI in terms of like there's days where like technology is awesome.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
this will be great. Upload my consciousness. This will be awesome. You know, have you tried out like the Apple Vision Pro?
I've never done the Apple Vision Pro. I've never once. I'm here to say this. Today is March 17th, 2025. I, Alex J. Campli, have never once used ChatGPT, and I'm proud of it.
That's so
I'm
good.
very proud of it.
But you use DeepSync.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Of course I've been using DeepSync for years.
ChatGPT, yeah, it's awesome.
You're like, yeah, man, it kind of rules.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Well, so you're like hardcore against it?
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if we should get into this.
Yeah, we don't have to, but I mean, I get it. I mean, I get that there's so much at stake. Like I probably could hear the arguments and more arguments, maybe on both sides, but I don't think, humans are being very responsible with progress.
Yeah.
I think that like a blanket statement there is because we're right off the cusp of like the Industrial Revolution. I know it is. No, we
are.
But that was the name of the game, was we can do anything.
Yeah.
We just put our minds to it. It's like Moore's Law. It just gets better and better over time.
But what are we going to do?
But no one's thinking of the implications.
And what are we going to do with all that extra time, man?
And what are we
what are we going to do?
Progress, and what does it do? And it just gets more like we need more. Our dopamine structures, our contentment, they're all falling apart.
What's going to happen when we got nothing left to do, man?
There's always something to do.
We got to write emails because ultimately it's just too hard to do all the other stuff.
Yeah.
We got to keep that stuff locked in. Nobody's listening to this. No one's listening to this. Yeah.
3 people.
Yeah, exactly.
My wife and my mother-in-law.
Yeah,
there we go. Yes, there we go.
100%.
So we love you guys out there.
Yeah. Thanks for everything. It really means the world for us.
Maybe lastly.
Yeah.
We kind of poo-pooed on AI a bit.
Yeah.
That was nice. Perhaps something like a hot take trend that you utterly do not like, maybe a pet peeve.
Yeah.
Not on set. It could be, but maybe something like a trend in the industry of like how movies are, maybe not how movies are made, like what they're saying, things people like that. Yeah. Anything comes to mind?
Stop moving the camera when people are just fucking walking.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Like, I'm being a hardo on purpose, but like the camera, I think we inform so much from the commercial space, and that dictates how we make narrative films now too. And we just move the camera without any intention. It's okay to not move your camera. It's okay for things to be a little boring and uncomfortable. It's okay for a scene to drag on for more than 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Stop moving your camera so much. And stop being so fast. Let it breathe.
Let it breathe.
But also on the reverse side then, and then I'm done blabbering. Be economic in your storytelling too. You don't need all sorts of, like, it's okay to not have inserts. It's okay to not have a ton of establishers, all that stuff. Like, you can keep it tight. You just don't have to move the camera all the time. Yeah. Just because you have a camera doesn't mean you have to move it. But I also probably should just be writing novels and stage plays.
Well, I think that's what will set you apart. Your voice is you, not moving. AJ's films have this sense of style to it. He doesn't move the camera.
Exactly.
And we love it.
And so in general, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Is like my actual thing is like do what you want to do because that's what makes your shit good. Is like if you're making stuff from yourself.
Yeah. The originality is like an interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any studies. I hope there's not actually, because there's I think a poetic beauty to it of like what your voice is, because it's not like if the homework lesson today is go be original, go be different. People who don't have that natural tendency to be different won't know what to do, and they'll just end up being weird.
Yeah.
But I think you don't have to tell someone who is naturally likes to express themselves, and you don't have to tell them to be different. They just are.
Totally.
But at the same time, you do have to remind them, like, just be you.
Yeah.
And they know what that means.
Yeah.
Like,
it feels so corny. I hate when people say it to me, but it is real. Like, it is like, I don't even think you have to be you. Just like just make the shit you want to make.
Yeah.
Like just make
Well,
what
you
you
have
want
to
to
be
make.
reminded of that too.
Yeah, you do,
because
because
there's so many other things that are telling you like, hey, I should learn from,
Yeah.
those that have gone before, and then you're adapting that to who you are and all of that.
And there's so
you need
many
to be
feedback
reminded,
loops now. There's
Yeah.
actually
Having
okay.
your friends tell you what
Yes,
works
exactly.
and doesn't work.
And I have okay, this is my last thing. I think like it's not advice, it's just something that seems to work for me is like don't ask so many people for feedback on your film. Like I see it happen all the time when you're in the edit. Like feedback is good and you want it to resonate with an audience. Resonate Films, here we are, shout out Drew. But like the thing of like, I don't know, just stop asking for feedback and just make it.
Yeah.
Like on your script, on your film, in
Yeah.
your edit. Definitely have people who you trust. I get that, but ultimately, like, it's not their film, it's yours.
Yeah. I think there comes a point where you stop.
Yeah.
Even I just watched a video. Steven Spielberg was doing that. He's like, my first like 2 films, I asked for a lot of feedback. And
Yeah.
and he is a big collaborator.
Yeah.
Like, he's very like and he doesn't have like a very unique voice.
Right.
He's good.
Yeah.
But
That's actually a good point. I agree with that.
so that goes to certain, like he listens to a lot of
Yeah.
people. But I think there does come a point where in your so-called career where you're like, you know what? I may have these close collaborators. Like,
Yeah.
how'd that make you feel? Just to kind of get a pulse.
Yes.
But at some point, people don't know it, but that's what they need and want. They want AJ's
Yes.
voice to come across.
Yes.
But sometimes they're like, that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
Or like, I didn't really get it.
Yeah.
You need that. Like we need more of that in society.
Yeah.
We need the abstract artists to express themselves.
Yeah.
And we need to begin to like have questions and conversations of like,
Yeah.
well, what do you mean by it?
Yeah.
Why'd you feel like it was weird? Like what was off-putting about it? Maybe he had a motive that maybe
Yeah.
he was trying to speak to something. What was it? Maybe you're the weird one.
Yeah. 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 You're the weird one,
You're
man.
the weird. I don't know, but
Beautiful.
AJ,
What a pleasure,
it's
man.
been awesome, man.
They don't know this and we didn't say it, but this is the first time we ever met. So
Yeah.
have fun with that.
Yeah.
No, this was fantastic, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I loved it. You're a pleasure to talk to, man.
Thanks, man.
The just so casual. I mean,
It's pretty manic, so I hope there's some threads there. You know?
Yeah. All right, man.
Dude, appreciate you. Thanks, man.